All right, let's talk about something that pretty much every property owner dreads: water damage. It's one of those things that can start off looking so small, so harmless, but it can blow up into a full-blown crisis, and way faster than you think. So, we're going to dive in and really get to the bottom of what's going on when water decides to show up where it absolutely shouldn't be.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You see that tiny little water stain on the ceiling, maybe a damp patch on the floor, and your first thought is, I'll get to that later. But here's the thing. That exact moment, that's the critical point. And the real question is, how bad could it really be if you just wait?
Well, turns out that little stain is just the absolute tip of the iceberg. What's really happening underneath is this cascade of damage. First, you see the obvious stuff. Your baseboards get all swollen, wood floors start to cup or buckle, paint and wallpaper begin to peel away. But honestly, that's just the stuff you can see. The real nightmare is what's hidden. Soggy, useless insulation, that classic musty smell popping up, and then the big one, hidden mold starting to grow. And if you let it go long enough, you're talking about actual structural rot. And this really brings us to the first big takeaway. You have to think of water damage as an unseen emergency. Seriously, what you're seeing on the surface, it's almost never, ever the full picture. You see, water is, well, it's relentless. It's sneaky. It finds its way into everything porous. Drywall, insulation, the subfloor beneath your feet, and it travels way further than you'd imagine from where it started. And this happens fast. We're talking within hours. Those materials start to swell up and warp. And even worse, all those little mold spores that are just hanging out dormant, they suddenly get the water they've been waiting for, and bam, they wake up and start to grow. And look, this isn't a problem for just one type of climate or one type of house. It can happen to anyone, anywhere. Sure, some places have to worry more about things like river flooding or pipes bursting in a deep freeze, but the most common causes, they're totally universal. Things like washing machines leaking, sump pumps failing, a leaky roof. These are things every single one of us has to worry about. Okay, so this is why when you're staring down a water problem, the single most critical factor, more than anything else, is time. The clock is ticking, and it starts the second that water starts to leak. Just take a look at how fast this all spirals out of control. Within minutes, not hours, minutes, that water is soaking deep into places you can't see. Then, within a few hours, the materials start to physically change. They swell and warp, and like we said, the mold gets activated. Wait just a couple of days? Now you're looking at full-on mold colonies and the very beginnings of rot that can compromise the structure of your home. So if there's one number I want you to remember from all of this, it's this one: 48. 48 hours, because after that 2-day mark, the risk of serious mold growth just skyrockets. And at that point, you're not dealing with a simple cleanup job anymore. Nope. You've got a potential health hazard on your hands that's going to require a professional team with special protocols to handle. And this quote, man, it just says it all. The difference between a quick cleanup and a gut-wrenching 6-month rebuild really can come down to how you respond in that very first hour. Think about that. The cost, not just financially, but emotionally, it's just enormous if you wait. All right, so enough of the scary stuff. What does the right response actually look like? Let's talk about the roadmap to recovery. This is the step-by-step professional process for actually taking back control when everything feels like chaos. The pros don't just show up and start winging it. They follow a very specific 5-step process. First things first, that emergency call. You need someone who's on call 24/7 to get a crew out there immediately. Then they assess and document everything, and I mean everything, using cool tech like moisture meters and thermal cameras to find every last drop. After that, they extract all the standing water. And then comes the most important part, the structural drying. It's only after they can prove everything is bone dry that the actual rebuilding can start. And let's zoom in on that term, structural drying, for a second, because this is the real game changer. This is what separates the pros from you or me with a couple of box fans. It's not just about blowing air on a wet carpet. It's a whole science. They use these massive, powerful air movers and dehumidifiers to literally pull moisture out from inside your wall cavities, from your insulation, all the places you can't see. Another thing the pros do is figure out what kind of water they're even dealing with, because not all water is the same. There's a big difference between Category 1 clean water from a busted pipe and Category 3 black water, think sewage backup or flood water. That stuff is a serious biohazard, and it requires totally different safety protocols, gear, the whole shebang. And this chart right here really lays it all out, doesn't it? Your shop vac is no match for a giant truck-mounted extractor. And your eyes definitely can't do what a thermal imaging camera does, which is see moisture hidden inside the walls. When you try to do it yourself, you almost always miss that trapped moisture. And that's basically a guarantee you'll be dealing with mold and rot down the road. Okay, so the place is finally dry. The emergency is over, right? Well, not quite. The journey isn't over yet. We've got to look beyond the cleanup itself and talk about the next steps: insurance, prevention, and the path forward. And this is always the first question on everyone's mind, for obvious reasons. Is my insurance going to cover this? The answer, as frustrating as it is almost always, it depends.
So here's the deal. Your standard homeowner's policy usually covers things that are sudden and accidental. A pipe that bursts out of nowhere, probably covered. A super slow leak you ignored for 6 months, probably not. And here's a big one. Flooding from rivers or storms, that's almost always a separate policy you have to buy. And this is exactly why that professional documentation we talked about, the photos, the moisture readings, is so crucial. It's the proof you need to get your claim paid.
And that really brings us to the final, most important point. Your home is dry, which is great, but is it protected? See, the real fix isn't just about cleaning up the mess. The real win is preventing the next crisis from ever happening. It's about shifting your mindset from just reacting to being proactive. We're talking about simple stuff here: checking the hoses on your washing machine, making sure your gutters are clean, testing your sump pump before a huge storm hits. Because at the end of the day, the cleanup just fixes the symptom. Preventing it in the first place, that's how you truly protect your home and your peace of mind.